moving us on to an unpopular opinion by Martian Ape, which is Zergs are necessary and castle sieges should not be fair. I'm not very good at explaining a TLDR on this one, but in general, they think that it'd be more fun if that like castle sieges weren't like on a 1-to-1 basis exactly. Hello, Kyrian, welcome in.
Well, then I'll see if I can come up with a decent TLDR. I think, honestly,
Thank you,
the best TLDR that I could possibly jump into this, it would be one of the paragraphs actually begins with a sentence that says, "As I said, I don't believe a small group of people should have all the power just because they are good at PvP, because that usually turns to tyranny real quick."
Lannister.
Yeah. So I think that's the main. I think that's kind of the TLDR that I would put out there of it. Is it's if it's too easy to have skill overpower just pure numbers, then it's going to end up being potential tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
So it should be more of a numbers based thing than anything else. But it would just be a different type of tyranny. Yeah. Gary, what do you think there, Drew?
Yeah, I'm trying to like digest. I was perusing that post as you're reading as well, and I think another point here is, in my mind, the winner of the battle should be decided with the best combination of four things: skill, PvP players, equipment, PvE players, organization, party leaders, and/or shot callers, numbers, guild leaders, and politician. So, there was a day and age where in a lot of MMOs, the PvE players with the highest gear just won PvP because there wasn't like a PvP mindset right in the game. And I wouldn't want to see that happen again, because then you drive away the PvP players, right? Who want to demonstrate skill over gear. There should always be, in my opinion, if you were to have like a gap, right, a skill gap, probably not coming through in the little bubble there. I was using my hands. But if you are at a skill gap, it should always slightly edge out PvP skill, right? And shot call. To me, shot calling falls under PvP skill as well. Group organization, right? That should always edge out just straight up gear. I don't think gear should be the determining factor for all PvP engagements. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of my thought about it. I don't necessarily think Zergs should also. I think it should kind of go like this: PvP organization, Zergs and PvP skill. I guess if we were to separate organization of PvP from PvP, like individual player skill, Zergs and PvP skill should be the next tier, and then gear should be the last tier. I just think that in something, especially like sieges, where you could have 100 v 100 or even more, depending on what they end up going with. Organization should be king, because it's so much harder to organize 100 people than it is to get some gear that's slightly better than somebody else. I think at least, some wrangling 100 people is tough, and getting them to flank and and wait for their moment to enter the battle if necessary, or capture objectives. So I think organization should always be, in large scale PvP, should be king in sieges, I think.
That's why 40-man raids used to be legendary, because they occurred more so than completing the raid.
I was the guild leader of a classic WoW in that 2019 guild, and just getting 40 people to show up was like the hardest part of the game. Incentivizing, making sure loot rules were fair, just getting people to be there. Oh my gosh, like killing bosses was a breeze. Just organizing them and getting them to be there, crazy.
Got to get 50 people to show up to account for the 10 that are absolutely not going to actually show up.
You knew the ones too that were always a 50-50.
I do like the power struggle with it not being exactly even, because then you have one that has more numbers than the other, but sheer numbers doesn't always work without good strategy. So sometimes if you have less people but a really good strategy, you can still outdo the numbers. I really like that. Mr. Valentine also says, I want a reason to fight the castle siege instead of a numbers game on how many people can we throw at the enemy. And And Alcialde says, Castle Sieges are not a numbers game if both sides are limited to a max number. And which is the case. We were talking earlier that, you know, 250 v 250 or maybe up to 500 v 500 if the servers can handle it. And, you know, those are just really good points on that. And honestly, even though they think it's an unpopular opinion, the comments seem to agree. Like Lineker specifically says, I don't think that's an unpopular opinion. It's based, and that's how it will or should be. Keep in mind, Zergs in Ashes of Creation are being dealt with the lack of teleportation. So I think that's really, like, there's a lot of interesting things. And like, calling back earlier, you know, to a different part of this podcast, Vertek, you said, you know, you have to build something new with these spare parts, and I think that's exactly what Intrepid is doing, and very well at it, if I may say so.
Yeah, I think it's the point of Zergs, or just controlling numbers of people in PvP. One of the exceptional things you get from a really good PvP shot caller is just this massive amount of game knowledge. So if you've ever been in large scale PvP with a good PvP shot caller, I am not that person, but I have been in them with a good PvP shot caller. They know like what every class is really good at in the moment that they need them to be good at that thing. Like they know every class's abilities, strengths, and weaknesses. Right? And that's insane amount of game knowledge to know, especially if you're looking at possibly 64 unique classes. Let alone 8 unique archetypes, but just knowing every tool they have in their kit, where they need to be positioned, who is grouped with who's best at healing melee groups, and who's best at healing range groups, and who's best at so just getting a really good PvP shot caller is an impressive skill. And I think that, like, again, that goes back to my point. I think organization of like a large group. So not even necessarily to me, a Zerg is just like throw numbers at a wall until the wall falls down, right? To me, the organization of that Zerg should be king in large scale PvP, because that's an impressive feat to know exactly, to outmaneuver your opponents, not just with the knowledge of class skills, but also the players in your group and positioning of the battlefield and all that. So sorry.
But then is it really truly a Zerg, or was it just greater numbers?
To me, a Zerg is
like, you're saying, a Zerg is
greater.
Just throwing numbers at people, like, go attack the walls, everybody at once, because we have so many people. Zerg is.
Because if you look back at the origin of Zerg or at StarCraft, right, you played a class, played a race that literally was dependent on creating a million small guys to throw at a base, regardless of organizing them. You just throw the Zerglings, right? That was it. That's the Zerg. So to me, maybe like, I think greater numbers and Zerg are the same thing. So I actually maybe disagree. I don't think the Zerg should win. I think Zergs with organization. I don't know what that equivalent would be in the gaming industry, but right. I don't know. Does that make sense?
I've always associated the word Zerg with just not necessarily organized. Just, hey, there's a thing. Everybody go squish it. Everybody. Yeah. What do you mean squish it? Just hit the damage buttons. Go.
Get your maces out and get to that wall and smash it with your mace, because blunt force, and everybody, doesn't matter who dies. I'm willing to sacrifice that.
Yeah. Exactly. But like, just having greater numbers would still be more of an organization and strategy play. And you just have greater numbers, and that helped you win. But it wasn't truly a Zerg, because you didn't count as your strategy being just having bigger numbers.
It's like 300, right? Sparta, like 300 people can fight off a Zerg, though, if you do it correctly, I guess.
Mr. Valentine has a question. Should the defenders of the castle have defensive abilities like caravans controlled maybe from a war room or something? That's
like a special set of skills that go to like a special skill bar, or like vats of oil and catapults on the wall. I mean, I guess it could be broken down 2 ways. Do you have like a shield of protection? You can just maybe you have a mage specialization in your castle, right? And you can do the Harry Potter thing where you've got the big the big shield around the fortress, right? I don't know. Would you have to unlock that? Would that be yet another progression tree? Or would you just say, no, we've got, typical medieval siege counter siege tools? Right. I don't know.
Honestly, Valentine, I think that both sides should have special things that they can either unlock or bring to the table, but it's going to take some kind of effort, like having the reliquary for the defending node. If they have something in their reliquary, maybe it'll help out during the siege.
Yeah.
But if there's an attacking group, since anybody
Light the
can
bay
lay
on
siege, and it
fire.
may not necessarily be a node versus node, then they might have to do other things. Like there's quests that they can complete during the ramp up to the siege that maybe they can unlock some kind of special group buff or something that the leader or the one that threw down the proverbial gauntlet could pop
You
out
got
like a
the
group skill or
the
something.
Lost Ark of the Covenant in your castle keep.
There you
The
go.
Crusaders are there to get it.
Oh, that's funny.
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know, because again, that's I think either that would be things you would either have to farm and prepare before the siege, or it would be a progression tree for some sort of siege group. But again,
Yeah.
how do you? What would that even cause? Under a guild alliance? Where would that be even
Right.
held under? Right? I'm not sure.
Mm.
Maybe you level up your siege, your siege sigil or whatever it is that you slam in the ground, to declare the siege. And you say, I'm bringing these things to it. And then you have the castle that can see that and they can prepare a counter. I don't know. That'd be
Yeah.
very interesting. I love plays and counterplays. So I think that's a really good question.